Hey everybody, how's it going? I am your host Adrian, coming to you almost live from lovely Petaluma, California, here in Studio MC2 at Quicksurf Internet Studios. The Geekinator is a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Do feel free to head on over to techpodcast.com and check out all the other technology-related shows over there as well. I'd like to encourage everybody to visit us online over at quicksurf.com. Please do subscribe to the show if you haven't already done so. You can find the subscribe links in the show notes on the website. You can subscribe to an Og Vorbis feed, an MP3 feed, or a video feed. You can also find us online over at YouTube, Dailymotion, Blip.tv, Stitcher Radio over at Stitcher.com, and TuneIn.com. So there's a variety of ways you can catch us online. And you can shoot me an email, geekinator@quicksurf.com, if you want to give me any links or anything or provide show feedback. Feel free to do so. With that, let's go ahead and get into the cool stuff that we got for this episode. Over at Gizmodo, I found this really interesting article. How or when will computers be as powerful as the human brain? I've always wondered this. And according to Mother Jones, 2025 is when computers will become as powerful as the human brain in terms of processing calculations per second. Um, we all know computing power roughly doubles every 18 months, but at that rate, how long will it take for computers to be as powerful as the human brain? So the animation shows not long. It's fairly slow going, but then there's a huge burst near the end because it doubles every 18 months, and so every 18 months it's you get much bigger and bigger chunks of processing power. And so pretty interesting. I'm not sure 2025 will be it. I mean, obviously, we've over the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've kind of hit a thermal wall, if you will, where, clock speeds have largely been limited. We haven't seen clock speeds go over, much over 4 gigahertz, if at all, in many cases, particularly in, mobile computing. But we have seen um a massive move to multiprocessing. So, we've gone from single processor to we had, hyperthreading. You could have multiple, sockets in a system to, multi-core and multi-core with hyperthreading. And we're getting up to where you've got, 6 cores per, socket. And it's only going to get, much more uh, intense than that. And I think what we're going to see long term is maybe a simplification of individual cores as execution units, a little bit of a simplification of those just so that they can make them run at a faster clock speed and simplify them down a little bit so they don't use as much die space so that they can pack more parallel processing onto a particular CPU socket. That's what I see coming in the future is, CPU cores will simplify a little bit, and per core, they'll maybe be a little less efficient, but in terms of instructions per clock, but it will allow them to ramp up the clock speed more, one, and two, fit a lot more parallel processing cores on the socket. So I would love to see something like that. Um, Obviously, I have no say or control over anything like that happening, but still pretty cool nonetheless. It's interesting to see what will happen. I always thought that, we would see a move to multi-core systems, and, Intel kind of, stuck their toes in the water a little bit with hyper-threading or simultaneous multi-threading, SMT, back in Pentium 4 days. And since then, it has exploded out to where, we've still got, 2 to 3 some gigahertz processors, maybe 3.5-ish gigahertz on the top end. And instead of, dramatically ramping the clock speed out to 10, 15 gigahertz, we've seen clock speeds stay relatively stable below 4 gigahertz or so, and just way more processing core and way more bandwidth going into the system. And that's a good thing. If you can accomplish the same thing, because there's a lot of stuff in computer land that can happen in parallel. And do you really think that the human brain is, a single threaded machine? I mean, it's not. There's a lot of stuff that goes on simultaneously in the human brain. And so I think, if we can pack more processing cores, the more processing cores we can pack onto a particular system, the better. So at a minimum, it improves overall system throughput. If you ever look in Windows or even in OS 10 or Linux, how many actual individual threads of execution are executing, you could easily jump out to, a 32 core system and use all of the cores and then some without much of an issue. Then your major problem is, in terms of system throughput, is your overall bandwidth tuned from memory and tuned from disk. So anyway, pretty neat. Definitely check it out. From Geeky Gadgets, Raspberry Pi camera board module launches in the UK. This is pretty neat. I've been following Raspberry Pi stuff for quite some time over on my sister show, Linux News Log. I thought I'd mention it here for those of you who are hobbyists and want to monkey around with Raspberry Pi. The camera module is available to order as of today, May 14th. So in the UK. So if you want to do that, they have a pretty neat YouTube video here you can check out as well. And like I said, as always, everything we've talked about is linked up in the show notes. You can find those online over at quicksurf.com. From Mashable, Microsoft is saying that Windows 8.1 will be a free update. Now, it was previously known as Windows Blue. Well, this update has been renamed from Windows Blue, which apparently was an internal code name or something, I don't know, to Windows 8.1. And if you already have Windows 8, this will be a free update. So pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it, to check it out and just see what it's all about. From Gizmodo, first video of the first ever carrier drone jet launch. Pretty wild. You're about to witness a historical event, the first drone ever launched from an aircraft carrier in a few decades, when autonomous drone planes battle each other in the skies, fire missiles at drone troops and battleships. Humanity will look back at this day as the true beginning of total drone warfare. So the Northrop Grumman X-47B launched today from the USS George H.W. Bush at 11:18 a.m. Eastern Time. It's not the first drone ever, but it marks the most important milestone. It heralds the complete worldwide mobility of the United States unmanned aerial vehicle fleet. So instead of having to rely on host countries for their drone operations, the U.S., starting now, is able to launch drones from aircraft carriers, which means we're probably going to see, at least here in the U.S., a whole bunch of money spent building aircraft carriers so that drones can be launched, so that we can have, the U.S. can have more points of presence worldwide that they can launch drones from. And we're going to see drones, larger drones that can be launched from aircraft carriers that have longer range, so that, you don't necessarily have to be in the immediate area, but you can still launch a drone and send it on its way. So kind of scary. So we'll see what happens. From Engadget, Google I/O 2013 is opening keynote is live tomorrow. Get your live blog here. So for those of you who want to follow Google I/O 2013, definitely check this out over at Engadget. They're going to be live blogging the whole thing for a whole whopping 3 hours. That's right, 3 hours. I don't have that kind of time. In fact, my day tomorrow is absolutely jammed. I have no time. So if anybody wants to take notes and send them to me, geekinator@quicksurf.com. From Ars Technica, Google's programming language, Go, gets a big speed boost. So Go hits version 1.1. It's 30 to 40% faster. They've added a whole pile of stuff. Pretty neat. If you're a Go user, definitely check it out. Also from Gizmodo, Skylab, America's first space station, was launched 40 years ago today. That's right. Before there was an International Space Station, there was Skylab, America's first permanent research base in space. It launched 40 years ago today, May 14th, 1973. This is before I was even born, believe it or not, soaring into the sky on the last day of the Apollo-era Saturn V rockets. My parents probably remember this, but this was a full 2.5-ish years. No, 3 years, almost 3 years before I was born. So I was born in 76. So, yeah, pretty wild. Definitely read this story. It's a pretty interesting read. From Engadget, Firefox 21 is now available for desktop. You can also get an Android version. Definitely check that out if you're a Firefox user. Personally, I am not, but I realize that I am not the center of this universe. I'm simply the center of my universe. And there are other people that like Firefox. So definitely go check that out if you are a Firefox user. From i4u.com and the i4u news, iPhone 5S has a Sapphire Glass Panel with integrated Fingerprint touch home button. Kind of interesting. This is obviously all rumor. A new report claims that Apple will be using Sapphire Glass on the iPhone 5S with an integrated home button. This would mean Apple drops the physical home button and adopting a touch-sensitive button integrated into a single panel of Sapphire Glass, which just makes it more minimal. I'm a firm believer that you do need to have some amount of button. The front here, I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me try to do this without showing everybody all my lights. The front button here, that's kind of a waste of space, because you've got this, but the way the phone works is all the speakers, and there's a bunch of electronics down here, so you do need to have some space beneath the screen. Same thing on the top, just for buttons and for the camera on the back. So I'm curious. It'll make it a little more minimal, but at this point, Apple's phones are really, you have just the number of buttons that you need, the button on the top to turn it on and off, a single slider switch for, vibrate mode on or off, and then volume up, down buttons and the home button. And that's it. If they remove the home button, then we're going to be down to 1, 2, 3 buttons and a slider switch. And I prefer physical buttons for those simply because, touch buttons, you tend to bump them inadvertently and all that kind of stuff. I prefer the physical buttons for sure. From GigaOM, that's a lot of videos. YouTube is now responsible for 17% of home internet traffic. In my house, YouTube is responsible for a whole lot more than 17% of home internet traffic. I can tell you that right now. YouTube is a major source of video consumption here in my house. So, yikes. We'll see. 17.1% of all residential fixed line downstream traffic in North America is from YouTube, according to Sandvine's latest Global Internet Phenomena report. The Traffic Management Specialist report is for the first half of 2013. They still list Netflix as the most popular bandwidth consumption pastime. 32.3% of all residential downstream traffic was caused by Netflix viewing. But YouTube's share has been growing and is up from 13.8% a year ago. And the more YouTube gets content on there that people want to see on a regular basis, TV shows, movies, that sort of thing, the more people are going to watch YouTube videos. It's inevitable. From Geeky Gadgets, Google is now offering 15 gigabytes to share between Google Drive, Gmail, and Google Plus Photos. These all used to be different silos. Well, now they're all smashed into one unified storage, whatever you want to call it. I'm okay with this. I don't really use Google a lot. I use Gmail, and I do have Google Plus, but as far as Google Drive goes and a lot of their other services, it's not really something that I take advantage of. So I've got more than enough space. From Slash Gear, Chris Hadfield and crew safely returned to Earth from the International Space Station. That's right. They are now on good old terra firma. So welcome back, guys, and hopefully you return soon enough. That'll do it for this episode of The Geekinator. As always, everything we've talked about is linked up in the show notes, which you can find online over at quicksurf.com. Please do subscribe if you have not already done so. If you have, thank you so much. And I will see all of you on the next episode. See you then. Bye.